What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Daily Battle podcast. Today we are speaking with Jack Roy and Dom Lisi, owners of creative studio Fast Magic. We're talking on their respective journeys as creative professionals and entrepreneurs, the challenges and successes of owning a service-based business, and what it takes to be successful as a creative in the modern world. Enjoy the show.
It's the Daily Battle podcast.
Let's get it.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Daily Battle. Today we are here with my friends Dom and Jack of Fast Magic, cutting it up. How you guys doing?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having us.
Of course. Tell us a little bit about what's going on right now. Fast Magic, the launch. Let's hear it.
Yeah. I'll give you a bit of a background on who we are and what we do. Well, this is only 2/3 of Fast Magic. We do have another part over in BC in Mac, our third partner. So, shout out Mac, not here today, but he is part of the gang. But yeah, we're a creative studio. Born and raised in Toronto here, and we're a small boutique studio, really focusing on a few kind of offerings, brand identity, design, a lot of content production as well through motion and still work, and then we kind of mess around with a little bit of event stuff as well, some experiential. And in the last year, I've also really, cut our teeth on working on some larger marketing campaigns and working with some brands like Jug that you see in front of us here that are, partners of ours and, really close to our hearts. So yeah, that's the business in short. I mean, Jack and myself and Mac, we all come from like different levels of kind of creative and marketing backgrounds, but decided to start Fast Magic in the later part of 2024 as a way to kind of start something fresh and new.
Yep. And
really get back to kind of the creative roots of why we all started doing this, like when we were young, why we all started to be creatives, and try to build a bit of like a smaller studio model and be able to get back to the real the creative part of being a creative person and working in the industry. So yeah, I mean, we've been blessed with about a year and a bit of great work with some awesome clients, and been able to produce some things we're really proud of. But I don't know, Jack, do you want to maybe introduce yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it pretty well. I think the biggest thing about starting any new venture is like you always come into it being like, okay, what's something I really want to like focus on right off the top that I wasn't able to do before? And like you mentioned it, being able to kind of like pick and choose early on the types of projects we were taking on, kind of like really focusing on building a brand for ourselves with the company, like Fast Magic as a brand, not like just focusing strictly on somebody else's company, was really cool. It was something that's kind of like, we got this clean slate where we could really like pick our identity of what we want to be creatively, but then also pick the brands to align with that identity.
Yeah.
So, getting to come in right away and work with something like a canned water company, it's like, you can do anything with that. So being able to kind of like have, the free form creative ability to take it whatever direction we wanted while simultaneously deciding what direction we were going to go is super cool. We're big on, you can see them in front of us, like doing things like stickers, we made some hats right behind us. We want to get into the physical product space. We want to be able to kind of like have these outlets of things that maybe at, our past businesses, we weren't able to have necessarily as much ability, freedom, or time to kind of go through. So, for me, I came from like a background that was more in the freelance space. Like I did a lot of photography, video, kind of stuff in music for like the better part of like a decade. And when I first started out, like, obviously, I was working with you. Yeah. I shot a lot of like hospitality related stuff, restaurants, bars, nightlife. And then it kind of translated into concerts, and concerts came from nightlife. And that was probably where I saw like my first like big shift was wanting to shoot music stuff. I like was liking the kind of stuff I was shooting. I was liking the output I had. I also like really liked the idea of like going to shows and coming home and being like psyched up from them and like wanted to edit it right away. And I knew that was kind of like a green light, because I was like, oh, some stuff I'm going and shooting and coming home and I don't even want to look at it. But then like there'd be shows I would shoot that I'd get home and I'd be like, I need to get this like up and out right now, because like, you know, you go and shoot a big concert and you get like the artist, the content in the same night, all of a sudden they're posting your stuff, and it's kind of like, that's how you build your brand. So that was always kind of like something that really fueled me to kind of like want to do it quickly, want to do it well. And yeah, I just kind of started seeing like more of a connection between that side of things. So that's when I started getting into the music side a little bit deeper, started working with management teams and labels on more than just photo. I started doing a little bit more creative direction, overall marketing, overall like song release structure, and like whole marketing plans for like what 6 months of releases would look like, what, you know, a year of building an artist world would look like. And then that kind of translated into artist management. And from there, I kind of was lucky to work with so many good artists early on. And yeah, that was where I started having these multiple verticals of, I had music and management, and then I had creative. And that I realized was kind of what separated me as well from other managers, was I had that creative vertical.
Yeah.
And then also from creatives, I realized I had this managerial side, so I could relate with other like creatives I was working with a lot more than a lot of other like music industry people could.
Yeah.
Because I could talk the same talk that, you know, the freelancers we're working with are doing for the project we're hiring them for. You know, I know how to talk about like, you know, what settings we're looking for specific shots. You know, I'm able to build the mood boards for the artists and talk to the photographers, and they get it. Whereas like, you know, there's always kind of that like Spider-Man meme moment of like, you know, budget, direction, and kind of like, you know, the artist kind of being like, I want it all, but I have $10. And it's like,
Yep.
you know, that was an interesting line to toe, but I think it also made me like a better manager. And I think it made me a better creative because I saw both sides of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was lucky to kind of do that for better part of like a decade, building kind of those two verticals. And then as I kind of focused more on the music side, I noticed I wasn't doing quite as much of like the photo stuff. I wasn't really freelancing anymore. I was honestly just too busy. And when I kind of wanted to give that up, I still wanted a home for it. And when I started thinking about a home for it, I wanted to do something that like encompass both sides of it. The things I loved about music was building the world, building the brand, and also like seeing things come to life. Like there was nothing like I geeked out more on like when an artist I was working with would like have a show or release a song that like I did all the creative for, and like seeing it come to life really like fueled me. So I was like, how do I bring that into the world with photography and creative that I loved on that side? And that's really how like the ethos, I think, of what I bring to Fast Magic came to be. And when I first started kind of like working with Dom and working with Mac, I was still freelancing, and I was freelancing with them just like I was freelancing like with you.
Yeah.
And we kind of all just always saw eye to eye of how we wanted like our creative and our personal goals to kind of be intersected.
Yep.
And I think it just made it like so easy that like we never really like committed or talked about doing anything, and we never really like built any sort of, you know, maybe we do this. It just like we were just all working together, and it all just fell into place.
Yeah.
And I think that was like how we kind of ended up knowing we had something with it, was we were all just doing stuff that we really felt like fueled by.
Yeah.
And like really like, you know,
The organic beginnings.
Yeah.
It's awesome. But I mean, you guys, you mentioned it, the work that went in independently as like a freelance creative to get to a point where you guys could launch something so successfully, and seeing the work that you guys have come out the gate with is like incredible. Like immediately it's like Porsche event, this and that, but it's a culmination of what each of you brought to the table. And I know with you, Jack, and I'd love to even go further into it, that balance of like when you're a freelancer working on things that you're passionate about, and it's like, oh, I'd probably do that for free if it gave me a chance to be in proximity to it and I'm excited about editing it, versus like, I got to keep the lights on. I got to just keep, you know, the mill running, so to speak.
such a balance.
Yeah. And like what was that process like? I mean, is when you're a creative freelancer kind of managing that balance?
I mean, I think like the whole way I always used to like see it was take care of the bottom line first and let everything else be like gravy on top type thing. It was like, if I knew I had a certain amount of jobs per month that I was going to cover all my hard expenses, you know, living downtown, car, all that kind of stuff. And then like a little bit on top for the entertainment side of your life, you know, things you want to do, go buy, go out, whatever it is at the time. If I knew I had that covered, I would easily justify spending all the other time I had on stuff that I felt pushed the other side forward and was stuff that like fueled me. Like I would have no problem going and shooting a Thursday night concert and staying up later than I should editing the stuff to get it to them first thing on Friday, if I knew I was already covered for the month and like my shoots and all that kind of stuff. But if I hadn't, like if I wasn't, I would always prioritize trying to get more work first. But I knew that I was doing that to be able to fuel the other side, if that makes sense. Like I always kind of wanted it to be the priority, but it had to be like a realistic growth. And I knew it would get there. I just had to kind of like also think about when's the right time to dive in on what further and take your shots too, right? Like if there was like a really good opportunity, you just make it happen. Like it's like, I remember shooting OVO Fest when I was probably like, I don't know, 19, 20. Yeah. And I was like, this is like an opportunity to shoot like an A-list artist. Like, I don't really care what I have going on the next day or whatever. It's like, I'll make that happen. I have to go do this kind of thing. And I think that's like something that everybody should kind of think about is like never let the opportunity for what you want to do kind of get dictated by what you have to do. Just like find a way to make it, like to do it kind of thing, you know?
We always talk about kind of like when we're assessing a project, right? Like you get some projects in, you're like, oh, this is so obviously a great, you know, money maker for us. You get others in, we're like, oh, the budget's not there, but I'm really excited about it. We kind of always talk about this like shorthand piece of like the 5 F's, which is something that, you know, I picked up, you know, the last agency that I was working with, but like there's kind of 5 F's you can use to analyze whether a project or something that you're doing makes sense. So fame is one of them. So like, is this going to be something that has great notoriety, something that gets out there, a bunch of people are going to see it. Maybe it's for a great brand or a great artist, you know, like the OVO Fest example. Maybe Jack's budget wasn't great on that one, but he would have done it anyway. There's fit. So like, it's a perfect fit for you. You know, you can do it really easily. It's right in your skill set, right? There's fitness. So it's going to like help you work on new skills. So maybe you're not great on that thing. And maybe the client's like receptive to you just kind of like, you know, doing your thing on it, or it's you know, someone who's really close that, you know, will let you kind of flex on it. Yep. There's fortune, which is obviously like big budget, you know, sometimes there's projects that come in you're not pumped about, but you're like, hey, this will help us keep the lights on and help us do other things that like aren't as, you know, necessarily like successful from a financial perspective, but, you know, will let us get that creative juices flowing. And then the last one's always like friends and family. So it's like you get someone who's really close to you. Maybe you're not amped about the project. Maybe it's not the perfect thing that you want to work on every day of the week, but you know, you want to help your friends and family out. So if you can take those 5 F's, you're like, okay, does this project have like 2 of those things? Or maybe it just has 1 and it's a really good one. It's just, you know, a great fame piece, or it's a great, you know, fortune piece. Like you can kind of assess it that way. And it's something that, you know, we use to kind of like assess whether a project makes sense or not, and be like, hey, I'm really amped on this. You know, I know this isn't necessarily going to make us a ton of dough, but like it fits one of the other apps really well. And like,
and then on like the flip side of it, it's like, if we're kind of all like not sure and it doesn't fit any of the F's, it's kind of like, maybe that's a reassurance that it's like passing on this or this not being a fit right now is like the right answer.
Yeah. No, it's great advice. I feel like a lot of young companies for sure, like assessing decision making when it comes to especially client work. Like, and I'd love to hear you guys talk about that a little bit too. Like, I mean, we're talking about as a freelancer, man, at making decisions on and doing things you're passionate about versus doing things you feel like you might need to do or should do. Scaling that up to an agency where it's like making you marry your clients, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
totally.
having a framework to work off of, I'm sure is very helpful. And also between partners. Like, you guys something to discuss.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when you're younger and you're working as a freelancer, you got to cut your teeth. So, you know, even when we first started Fast Magic in 2024, we were going to take on whatever just because we were a new entity. You know, we had a lot of good connections, but we really wanted to like see what the new arrangement was going to kind of look like.
There's also a little bit of fear there too, like ultimately, right? Like you have all these ideas, you know, all these people, you see all these things, but it's like, is this going to work?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's like
the imposter syndrome creeps in quickly.
Yeah.
Do you think that like doubt, because I know, you know, I'm working in entrepreneurial, I feel like, is that a thing that's universal in
100%. Yeah. I mean, it was like, I don't think we when we first did it, I think we were all confident like we can get clients in,
Yeah.
but it's not just about that. Like the reason that we started the business was to do interesting work, to do work we were excited about,
Yeah.
to be able to pay the bills doing it, which is every, creative person's dream. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be applying for a job in 2 months and
Yeah.
doing this on the side. Right.
Or like going on, like, when you transition out of a phase and you kind of are like, you've mentally in your mind kind of gone past that. Like I kind of knew my freelance photography days were behind me. I didn't really necessarily want a month in to be like, I think we need to pick up more freelance work. You know what I mean?
What was that process like? Like obviously photography was a huge part of your identity. And then, elevating to this next stage of your career, what was the process of, was that a painful divorce or?
Yes and no. I think it's interesting because I would say I'm like more in love with it now than I was when I was a freelancer, but I do it a lot less. And I think a lot of the reason I didn't want to do it anymore was because I felt like it was a job. I would go to shoots and the night before I wouldn't be excited for them. I would like I said, I would go home and edit some jobs and I'm like, I don't want to do this right now. Like I would shoot stuff and I'd be like, this, like, I'm not excited looking at this photo, even though I know like objectively it was like a good product. I would be like, this doesn't like make me feel like fulfilled. And like, I kind of caught myself free falling in that a little bit at one point. It was just like, if I'm going to do photography, I can't shoot this. And when I stopped shooting for work, it made me really love it again. And like the part I love about photography so much is like dictating the like moments with like the people you care about the most kind of thing. Like, and I would shoot photos at all of our parties and things growing up and like whatever. And like things that I was excited and happy about. But then all of a sudden I'm going and shooting something for like, I don't know, just giving an example, but like a hair salon or something. And it's like, this means nothing to me.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like just you saying that makes me think like photography is so personal.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's a very personal thing. And like when you're going into restaurants, taking photos of fast food,
It feels different, right? Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing now is that like, Jack's done a great job and, we have a lot more fun, I think, with the moments that we are taking the photos ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we still get a lot of, commercial motion and still work, but we're also doing things like putting together social plans for, brands like Jug or Banditos, the Mexican lager company that we work with. And, there's moments where Jack and I are just like, oh, we're in the studio. Let's just grab a can and take a few shots. Like, when we needed our first set of like social assets for Banditos, I just like threw a cowboy hat on and like a jean jacket and we took some photos and like the sun was setting. We got some like nice like golden light, orange light coming through the window. We got these like, objectively really great photos that didn't take any pre-production. We just kind of were messing around. And I think that that's something that, you lose when it becomes deliverable based all the time.
Yep.
And we're lucky to have partners that also allow us to like just mess around with stuff a lot of the time and see what kind of comes out. Which again, I think is, a reason why we started a smaller studio because it, funny enough, like my old agency that I worked with, like was more formal and I've actually enjoyed going back to doing a lot more of the manual design work myself. And being able to, just kind of go back to
fall in love with it almost.
Yeah, the reason that I started as a designer and as a creative person was like sitting down on Illustrator for 5 hours at a time and just messing around with logos and, and graphics until I found something great. And like that piece has been really like, reinvigorating.
So let's dive in there because I will definitely get to Jug and the equity stuff. I'm curious to hear a little bit about that. Two things. First, sounds like you guys have an awesome culture, which is, I feel like that's first and foremost. Being excited to create or collaborate with the people you work with, I feel like is step one. But I'd love to hear about your story and design. Like where did that start for you?
Yeah, I mean, I started as when I was really young as just like one of those arts and crafts, like arts kids that was always, creating something, on their own, drawing and sketching when I was like, really young, like a kid. Got into like graffiti, street art kind of stuff in high school. Fell in love with like stickers, which is why you're gonna still see stickers with our brand kind of like forever. Poster design, things like that. Just kind of like taught myself how to do it. I had a few friends along the way show me how to like use Photoshop, got some good advice that, you really got to nail these programs down, but also learn the direction side of it. I think that's something that maybe came a bit more naturally as I was obsessed with like fashion as a kid. I was like obsessed with like skate culture because I was a skateboarder as a kid and like, obsessed with like the design of the gear and the t-shirts and the deck designs and like things like that. So that part of it, the art direction, creative direction part of it was growing, but I was also growing my technical skills at the time. Ended up, applying to get into OCAD, got in, didn't end up going, and I ended up going to university instead. But then when I was at university, kind of kept doing the same stuff, just in a different context.
Was that like doing it as part of your education or doing it?
No, just doing it completely separately. I studied art history at school. So there was some connection there, but it was obviously much more academic focused. It wasn't as like physical and technical.
Yep.
But while I was at school, started a production company that still exists called Breathe. Shout out Steve and the Breathe guys. And we kind of just cut our teeth on like taking photos and videos for like local businesses in Kingston.
Yep.
Doing design work and random stuff, whatever we could really get our hands on. We would just straight up walk into a business like the local poutine shop and be like, "Do you want a new logo?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, we're not going to pay you for it." And be like, "Yeah, no problem, all good." And like just started doing stuff like that to get something to do.
Yeah.
And versus just partying all the time, it was like, okay, maybe on Sundays now we just get up and go shoot a video. So did that, and then ended up, kind of catapulting from there. The whole time really focused kind of like on, just that design piece, picked up photography along the way, as I think a lot of people do. But yeah, my passion kind of still lies, very focused on the design world. Which again has naturally progressed into more creative direction, working with designers. I love working with like young designers. I love working with and collaborating with designers as well, which is, probably the next step for us. It's, you said the culture is great. The culture is easy when it's, three friends kind of like messing around in their studio space. I think that's the next step for us is, continuing to expand that, but also figuring out how we can run a boutique studio that is, not becoming corporate and not becoming something that we don't want it to be, and kind of like maintaining a lot of the
identity,
or lack of the magic for lack of a better term, which we always use in like a cheeky way, but also very corny. But that keeping that kind of like secret sauce, I think, is something you can't really lose, right?
Is that a difficult line to toe?
I think it is. I think like you have to make sure that as you grow as a business, that you're still satisfying all of the needs of the business from like a financial perspective, a management perspective, an operational perspective, but also, making sure that you're really cultivating an environment that people can be creative in, I think is super important. Making sure that new people who come in understand what your studio is about, I think is really important. And at the end of the day, we run a business and we work in an industry where the work says a lot. So like if you're easy to work with, you're fun to work with, and it looks good and it performs well and it's smart and your ideas are good, I think that's what makes a really good, creative group in general, whether that's an agency, a studio, collective, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's, in my mind, what we're really trying to get towards is just like cultivating that arena where cool, interesting, creative ideas can kind of, be fostered.
Wicked.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, and another like thing that we've definitely been talking about, like focusing on is, making sure we're doing things in the community as well, right? Like we're like, he talked about cultivating the arena like internally, but it's also making sure that we have a heartbeat on like the culture of the city as well. Who's kind of doing what in space that we like are interested in, who and how can we collaborate with them and do something together. We love the idea of being able to bring our world to other businesses. And, whether that's like collaborations, whether that's, helping them reface, whether that's doing an event together, being able to kind of have that freedom to like build what that community looks like to us and the people we want to like align ourselves with, and, ultimately be able to step out of our comfort zone with, is something that we're like really trying to start to focus on, is like, how do we put ourselves more out there as creatives and be like something that when people think about the Toronto, creative culture, where some of that comes to mind, right? Because we've done all these different things in different worlds, whether it be entertainment, whether it be athletics, whether it be hospitality. Like we want to have clients, friends, and like a piece of all those things, and be first to thought on every vertical.
Yeah, I think that like, creative studios and like the model's changing a lot too.
Yep.
You know, like the traditional marketing or, you know, creative agencies, like you pay us for these ideas and these hours and we output work. I think now we're seeing examples all over the world where, you know, creative studios are becoming kind of like the arbiters of taste a lot of time. And you have businesses that are, you know, starting as creative studios and then evolving into something else, right? Like, I heard something recently about like, you know, I was reading about Acne Studios. Like Acne actually started as a creative agency that just started making jeans for like, I think it was like a holiday party or something like that.
Okay.
I think I saw a TikTok about that. I said I read it, but it was definitely a TikTok. Yeah. And like, you know, that type of thing, you know, a company like Mischief that you see in like, that's really an ideas and like creative company that's now selling products and selling ideas and, you know, essentially like activations of their brand. Right.
Yeah.
So even like Cops Donuts.
I was going to just say Cops is a really interesting, like local example.
Cops is another one too, where it's like, yeah, they identify as like a creative company that sells donuts. Right. Crazy. So like we've, you know, I think that that's really the vision long term is like, how do we kind of break out of the mold? And honestly, that's where businesses like Jug or our beer partner Banditos have allowed us to like come on as creative partners, not just as you know, a vendor of theirs that sells them creative services or marketing services, which is I think where the model is the most interesting for us because it goes beyond how many hours can I charge, right? You know, creatives are so susceptible to like overworking, burnout, you know, and the way to fix that and make more money and grow is to hire more people and become bigger. But then you run into the challenge of, okay, when are we going to lose our identity? When do we need to take on more work we don't want to do to keep the lights on and a bigger studio with more people and more salaries? But one way you can kind of like curb that, I think, in 2026 is with, you know, things like brand partnerships, things like building Fast Magic into a brand versus just like a company, if that makes sense. Like into, you know, our hope is that our clients come to us to also like want our name on whatever we're doing together, right? So that's, I think, the real vision. And I think that's where there's a lot of changing in landscape.
And I was even just going to say on that last point, like it's almost the same thing we already are internally doing when we're picking our clients. We want them to think about us when they're picking their creative partner. You know, we want to work with certain brands because of the cachet and the world that they built and, you know, who they might be affiliated with and what they've done. We want people to also see that in us. And we want like, you know, oh, they did an amazing job on, you know, the design of this canned water company's can, you know, maybe they're looking to do something like that. And it's kind of like, not only did they do great design work, it's like, look at the culture they have instilled at that company. Here's a bunch of other things. And like, you know, here's events that they've thrown that, you know, the product then makes sense being at. It's this whole world that gets created. Right. So
yeah, I think when you have good partners as well, it just, if they believe in your vision and they're not just coming to you for the service, I think it really changes the game, which I'm sure you've seen as well with, you know, a number of different clients. You know, some of them are just like, send me the invoice, send me the deliverables, let's call it a day. Others will be like, well, what else you guys got going on? You know, they're more interested in the world that you kind of bring, right?
Yeah. The culture, man, at the end of the day. Yeah. And it's really interesting too, what you guys are saying, where you guys are invested in these brands that you're working on too, which is really interesting to see. And you can feel like, you can feel the family of products when you look at,
for sure,
you know, Jug Water, you can feel Fast Magic in it. And I feel like that's something really interesting. So, I mean, do you have any advice, I guess, on that tip of, you know, as, you know, partners, company owners grow and they're trying to get to that second level? Do you have any advice on how to maintain that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that like, again, going back to like, you're going to have to quite literally like eat shit on some things. You're going to have to like, you're going to have to cut your teeth. But when you catch a good vibe on something, when you like someone's energy, when you feel like somebody's like, you know, trusting you with their vision or with their baby to a certain extent, which, you know, especially when you're working on branding and brand identity, a lot of the time we work with founders who don't have a logo or don't really have like an ethos for what they have a great business model and they've built that up, but they don't know what it's going to look like, or they don't know what it's going to sound like, or how it's going to express into the world. Like they're putting a lot of trust into you. And as soon as you get a good vibe on that, like roll with it, even if it's not like always going to be the biggest moneymaker, you know, try to get yourself taken care of. Don't get ripped off. Cause I think a lot of creative people get ripped off too. keep an eye on your back. But at the same time, like as soon as you find those partners, whether they're businesses, whether they're other people, I think there's a huge opportunity to lean in. And I think also create stuff for yourself, right? Like I think in today's day and age, it's so easy to pop up and, start a new brand, start an event series, start something as small as like, a mood board Instagram page or something on Arena or Pinterest or something like that. Like, I think you can do so much to just create your own thing. Like even these like sticker packs, that's like, these don't take a lot of effort. You just design them, send them to a sticker company. We assemble them all together and all of a sudden we have like a product here in front of us. Right. So follow your passion and whatever you're interested in and just do it. Cause I think at the end of the day, everything's so accessible and you've got, the world at your fingertips that you can push it out to, right? So
ties me back to walking into a poutine shop, asking if you can make a logo for free.
Yeah.
It's like there's a drive or a passion to create that's pushing that, right?
You can just you can do that too, right? And like you see it a lot on TikTok and stuff or reels where it's like, oh, I redesigned this company's logo, right? Like giving yourself assignments if you don't have work you're interested in.
Yeah.
Like if you're a designer or a photographer and you're taking photos or design or making designs for companies you're not interested in, it's like, we'll find some that you are.
It's a really interesting point right there. And like people used to ask me all the time, like what advice would I give to a photographer that's starting off, or like, how do I get good at photography? And my advice has always been the same. And it's just go out and do it and don't worry about how you look and how people see you.
Yeah.
Because the number one thing, especially as it pertains to photography, is if you don't shoot it, it doesn't look like anything. If you shoot it, maybe it's not the best, but maybe you see why it's not the best, and the next time you're doing it in a different way. If you are in that moment and you realize and you're about to shoot something and you're afraid that somebody around you is going to look at you for trying and think that like that's lame, it's kind of like if you're going to let that be the reason not to do something, you're never going to get good at it.
Yeah.
So you kind of, back to Dom's like eating shit aspect, you kind of got to be able to kind of like put that aside sometimes and just be like, I'm going to be new at this. I'm going to suck at it at the beginning.
Yeah.
But the only way I'm going to get through that is if I just do it. And I've been seeing, Dom made a great point about like in the design space, I see a lot of people on TikTok and Reels that are kind of like, this is what, like, if I was to design something for Ferrari, this is what it would look like. And then they just pitch and it's like, tag Ferrari in the comments. And it's like, all of a sudden, they don't know it, but they just built a case study.
100%.
Right. And it's like the same thing with photography. Like you want to shoot for an artist, go out and shoot artists. Like put work on the table. You may not get paid for it at the beginning, but that's how you build your portfolio and that's how you get good. So when the opportunity comes, you're not figuring out how to use your camera when you're getting an opportunity to shoot with Drake. Right.
It's incredible advice too. Like it takes courage. Like that's part of it, is it takes courage to create. We're doing it right now where it's like, I love talking to interesting people about whatever it might be. And it's like, well, I'm going to have to start doing that if that's what I want to do. But it takes courage, but it's the people who are overcome that and start doing that will eventually turn that into their craft. Right.
For sure.
I appreciate that you think we're interesting.
But really it does, like, it's like the old saying of like, it takes your 10,000 hours. Like it really does. And whether that's watching videos on what you want to learn about, like you can teach yourself any program online now. You can go out and shoot or design or do whatever on your own time. You just have to make the time to do it.
Yeah.
Really, like
invest, right?
Yeah.
It's a full-time job. I think working towards being a creative person, because we're so lucky to be able to do what we do. Like I think that there's so many people out there that would like die to have, a studio that's successful, or die to be able to like put on a podcast and have the means to do that. Right. And so it's a competitive industry, especially in the city that we live in. So, making it like your life, I think is important. Right. And, everything takes balance. And I think at moments in your life when you have the time too, like I'm glad that, for example, the story I told about being in university and like using our free time, like that was the time when I had the most free time that I probably will ever have in my entire life.
Yeah.
I used that time to like cultivate creative skills and like learn what it felt like to walk into a business and pitch myself and all of that, like, or make a video. I remember the first time we made a video, I went to take a light down and I like screwed it up from the top and it fell on my head. and like almost knocked me out. And I was like, thank God I did that there, and not like when I had a good opportunity with like clients on set that actually like would make a difference, and I, you know, would like ruin my reputation through that. It's like, yeah, had I not woken up on a Sunday to go shoot like, you know, an artist just playing guitar in like a empty classroom at school, right, I wouldn't have learned that lesson, right? So yeah, when you have the time, do it. And if you're anytime you're not, you know, tied down by responsibilities of life, which is such a reality of the world we live in, like try to create as much as you can.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's also like the funny thing about like the time and everything, and like also like not being afraid to make mistakes early on. I remember like it must have been one of our first like restaurant shoots ever. I remember I showed up, and not only did I not have batteries for my camera, I also didn't have an SD card. Like not only did I not have one of the things I needed, I had neither. Yeah. And it's just like, you know, things happen, but you learn. And then, you know, that helped me realize I need to have a inventory checklist before I go to shoots.
I bet
need
the
to
next
pack
shoot,
bags the night before.
The next
it never happened again.
Yeah, exactly.
4 SD cards, 27 batteries. Yeah.
Sometimes you got to learn the hard way, you know, and this is where there's formal education, and, you know, we got the school of YouTube, and there's so many ways to learn, but you learn through going out and doing, and you got to fall on your face a couple times. Yeah,
there's definitely moments where I was like, it would have been cool to go to school and learn this so that I didn't have to totally like embarrass myself in front of a client, or I've sent like, you know, sent print files out without, you know, being packaged correctly or whatever. And then the client's like, hey, why is my printer telling me there's no way they can print it the way it is right now? I'm like, oh, that's weird. Yeah. They must not know what they're doing. Like, obviously the printer knows what they're doing, but so like you kind of dip and dodge your way around it. But yeah, I mean, definitely a student of the YouTube era for sure. Like didn't have any like super formal education, but also used like a lot of online tools, like, you know, tutorials, you know, nonstop to try to do that. And then also once I, you know, found peers, like, you know, Jack and I are sitting beside each other most days, and Mac as well, like, we're just like, oh, how did you do that? Even now, right? And like, we're pretty proficient. I still think like a lot of the programs we use, like you're never truly a master of them. There's new ways to do things all the time with the, you know, the come up of AI. Now there's like a whole new world of ways that you can create. So we're constantly like bouncing off each other.
And even like in that moment too, you realize that like there's so much, you know, that other people would be interested in that you don't give yourself credit for kind of knowing. Like I tell Dom all the time, and I tell Mac in a different vertical the same thing when it comes to video editing. I'm like, showcasing your process is the new tutorial, right? Yeah. And it's like, I follow people on Instagram that like will do BTS of how they achieved a certain photo or how they designed a certain album cover art, and it's like, I'm like watching, I'm like, oh my God, it's not that it's that easy, but it's like, oh, I get it. And I see, like, I'm seeing it on a program I'm familiar with, whereas like there's some tutorials you watch where you're like, this, I don't know how to match my like level of experience. Yeah. Whereas like when there's something direct that you're kind of like, you see exactly how they got to that thing, and it's something you're interested in, it like relates a little bit better. Yep. And I think that there's a whole world of, you know, creatives being able to showcase their process now so easily with these platforms that, you know, it's a whole other way to take advantage of marketing yourself, like we mentioned.
That's it. It's incredible marketing too. It's like, I saw something recently, and it was, give your content away for free, but sell your implementation, or something like that. And I think it's great advice where it's like, show that you have the knowledge, and people will want you to be the person who's implementing
100%.
it. 100%.
I think like so much of like, as a creative person, your social pages are really like a shop window for, you know, it's a term I've used in the past as well, where I've had so many projects where people will come across an Instagram page or a website or whatever and be like, can you do that for me? And it doesn't matter what that first thing was, whether it was something you did for yourself or something you did for a client or just some random, you know, one night assignment you gave yourself to create something. Like if somebody sees it and likes it, it's kind of like a earworm there for when they need that thing to come and ask you to do it. Right. And yeah, like Jack said, you know, I've been using Illustrator and Photoshop for like 15 years almost now, probably more than that. And like, I still see a reel of like some like 17-year-old kid doing something, and I'm like, oh, that's how you do that more efficiently than I've been doing it for like a decade now. Like, sick. Okay, cool. Like saving that one. Like
Crazy.
So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity to learn there. Right?
You guys, we mentioned AI. I just want to dive in there really quick, just because you guys.
Fun topic.
I mean, yeah, you're on design. You're on the design side, Jack. You're a master of many trades, but coming from a photography background, how do you guys see the landscape changing, as a creative studio or even for freelancers with how rapidly AI is taking hold?
Yeah.
You wanna go in first?
I can. I mean, I have a good feel like I have a good opinion.
We
on
all
it.
definitely have opinions on it.
I think like as technology grows, like I always say this, like I think there was a bunch of like really pissed off monks that were like writing books by hand when the printing press came out that were like, well, this is gonna it's gonna put me out of a job. Now I can not handwriting these books, and they're just printing them. Like, it's the same thing for a lot of designers or photographers when digital cameras and design programs on computers came out, right? So I think to a certain extent you can't be a Luddite and you can't like hate the technology. You kind of have to learn how to use it. But I do think it needs to be done in a tasteful way and done in a way that kind of remains true to like the actual creative vision and the ideas side of it. Like AI has helped me do my work, and I like to use AI as like an assistant for what I do, not to do what I do.
Okay.
So not as a replacement for me in my daily workflow, but as a way to speed it up, to save me from doing a lot of like the rote work that I'm doing from time to time. But I think you always got to keep an eye on like, what you're using as references when you're building AI, and not copying others too closely or stealing from people in a way that is, that isn't right. And I think there's so much potential, and I think if you don't tap into AI as a creative person right now, inevitably and maybe unfortunately you're gonna kind of get left behind. But it's definitely like happening more and more where we're getting like, hey, I made this on AI, can you do something like this for me?
Wow.
Which at times is great. Like I've had, clients or friends, bring like, this is what I want. Like, how would you do it differently?
Yep.
It's annoying when they're like, do this exactly, or I'm just going to use this. But yeah, that's my viewpoint, at least from a design perspective. But
I mean, I have different thoughts for different worlds of how like I think AI is kind of not only changing but should be kind of used. I think like as long as it doesn't replace you trying to do your work, I think that's important, because like a client who may hit you up and be like, I need a logo, and then they hit you back being like, never mind, I made one in AI. It's kind of like they probably were a client that wouldn't have wanted to spend money on the logo to begin with, and probably would have been a little bit tough to kind of work with.
Yeah.
And I kind of see it as like a blessing sometimes when it's like they fulfilled what they wanted out of it, and they got something that they're happy with, and we didn't have to go down this maybe painful path that nobody leaves happy with. Whereas I think, if somebody has the chops to kind of be able to be like, hey, I've made a mood board. I've used AI to kind of start to flush it out. I know this is kind of just the starter. I would love for you to take all these as references and really flush it out and really put some intention behind it.
Yep.
I think that's when it can be really powerful. I think, a lot of people use things like ChatGPT to kind of do a lot of like the lifting and thinking for them now. And like, I know tons of friends who tell me like, yeah, like I respond to all my emails using ChatGPT, and I'm kind of like, maybe don't do that. But
a lot of the world.
But I also then do get when it's like, hey, I wrote this massive like 3-page response. Can you check it for spelling?
Yeah.
And it's like, that is great. Or, can you say this in a way that is, X, Y, and Z? And I think there are times where it's great for that. But as long as it doesn't do the replacement, I think that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah.
And that may grow and change in some areas. But I think as long as it doesn't make people be lazy, especially in the creative space, I think that's where it can get dangerous. And like, just speaking to a little bit on like, people ask me about it on the music side a lot as well. I think it's the same thing. There's a lot of provisions being put in with award shows about how much of a song can be AI, what constitutes on Billboard of being able to be eligible for Billboard if the song is made not by an artist, if it's made by AI. Record labels are building and developing and signing AI artists that they're making and control. It's a dangerous slope, but then I also think of it like I'm a 16-year-old kid in my mom's basement trying to like figure out how to use Ableton or, Pro Tools, and I have no musical theory background. I'm going on to some of these programs and it's like, I want to start to like learn how to create certain chords. And like, there are apps now that help you do that. There are apps that help you learn how to like do cadence in writing. And I think that tools, when used properly, can be great. Again, do I think like artists ran by labels that are completely 100% AI should be able to like win Grammys? Maybe not.
I agree.
But I think if they're using it as tools to only build up what their skill already is, I think that that's a great tool. And I think we should take advantage of, technology changing and growing and making us be able to do things that we weren't able to do before.
There
right?
has to be like some protections, right? And
For
like
sure.
Inevitably there probably won't be. Like nothing's gonna stop a business owner from creating a logo for themselves and implementing it at, to their best degree. But I'm glad I'm not a copywriter right now because I think that industry is like getting decimated.
Yeah.
I've talked to like family friends who work in like the animation industry in California, and like entire teams of people are losing jobs.
Yep.
So it's a tough one because it's like you simultaneously have to learn how to use AI unless you want to get left behind.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also going to like threaten a lot of our livelihoods and jobs. And like there will be less people coming to, independent creatives. Now, I think the gap in AI is the ideas.
Yep.
And like AI needs good inputs to actually create a good output.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I say that now. By the time this episode is released, that might not be the case because of how quickly things are, growing. But I think that direction piece is so important. And that's why I think it's important to learn the tools, because at the end of the day, the human idea part of it, I think, is what won't be able to be replaced as effectively or with as much ingenuity or with as much kind of like context and precision. So I think it's about, figuring out how to use it and then use your ideas. And hopefully, people will still come to guys like us and you and say, well, I need a really good idea and I need to do it really in an agile way. So I would like to tap into AI to do that. And we kind of like own that arena of how it's done. But we're already seeing it. Like Coke put out their second holiday commercial that was like completely using AI this year. Right?
And it's been a hot button topic though.
Yeah, I mean, people are fired up about it. But
you brought up music. There was a black metal project came out called Drogville, and it was like big deal. People loved it. And then Reddit, I guess, someone
called it out.
Was like, this something's off about the cover. It started about the cover. And then from the cover, it exploded. And it was like, no, it's the music.
Do you remember turnitin.com when we were kids at school?
Yeah,
we used to like put essays through it. There are ways you can do that with like music.
Yeah,
okay.
So like basically it reads the metadata and it can tell you certain parts were generated.
The audience was pissed. And then this is like, you see it in tattoo culture.
Yeah.
Where it's like, my art, like, okay, look, I feel like anyone who's working in Creative Suite, like there's some level of AI in the editing process, at least.
For sure.
There's like people being like, a tattoo artist should never put AI on skin. It's like, well, okay, this is built into the tools now. It's synonymous. It's gonna be very difficult. But I agree with what you're saying. I really like what you're saying, where it's like we use these tools for efficiency, but prompting is going to become an art form where it's like
it's going to be entire jobs.
It's going to be entire jobs.
I was going to say,
if not already.
There's definitely going to be places.
And I got to say, for me personally, like at the beginning, I was torn on it, but man, some of the AI video creators, Jurassic Smoothie,
it's amazing.
It is I'm
unbelievable.
It
blows your mind. Yeah.
Fascinated by it. Like I can't stop looking at it. I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
It's kind of like the best like creative tool that you could imagine for, and it's unfortunate that it's like simultaneously threatening the industry in a lot of ways, because like
never been a better time to be on the internet.
Yeah, it's like you're cranking out 100%. a few like lines of ideas, and then all of a sudden it's like I remember the first time I used Midjourney, it's like almost overwhelming. You're like, what do you mean I can create anything? And you're like, I like when I scroll down to the start of my Midjourney account, it's like the prompts are so funny because you can tell I'm just sitting there being like,
I can do anything.
Yeah, it's like,
give me a dog with a ball.
Yeah, exactly. Like two bulldogs that look like these ones, and then it's like a photo of my dogs. But like yeah, it's like almost overwhelming how limitless it is at times. But yeah, you're right. Like there definitely are already jobs for just purely like AI prompt generation. If you get in, to like the Reddit threads, like the Discord chats, like things like that, like there are people every single day like just crafting some incredibly beautiful work.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, full-time creators on Instagram, just putting videos on Instagram.
Putting stuff out.
Yeah.
And it is the coolest. It's super, super cool.
I follow this one account that does essentially like they make music out of cartoons from when we grew up, and it's like they'll make like a Family Guy character, and like it's an entire song that like they wrote and ran through like AI programs to generate a music video that's based on the cartoon, and they'll do that for movies, they'll do it for all this stuff, and I'm like, this is like sensational. Like this is it's everything you could want, like when you're like browsing social media. It's something that's like you never saw as a medium of something you love, but also like just current.
Yeah. Right? Where I do find it a little, the copywriting thing is
the IP lawyers are going nuts.
The copywriting is one that I am like torn on, and writing in general. Like I recently joined Substack, and I'm like, this is such a cool community.
Yeah, it's cool,
like
cool
people are just writing for the sake of writing, and some of the stuff that you'll see like accounts with no following, and like this is like a profound idea, something I needed to read, which is awesome. But like if we have a program that can formulate all of our thoughts into words, there's without a doubt is going to atrophy parts of our brain. Like
without a doubt. Yeah.
Right. And so I'm curious to see how that works. And I think I'm still finding it personally, like when I use it, I find it very mechanical at times. Yeah. Where I'm like, I could never, like, I like putting flavor in an email. Yeah. You know what I mean? I like
totally.
Yeah. So it's like, I know
never wanted to replace that.
It's like, the ideas part of what we do is so important that like I've done it before, and I've like been like, okay, I have no idea for this. Let me see what ChatGPT thinks about it. But I try to avoid that, because I think the best work that I've made in my life has been caused by like some weird moment or like offhand conversation I had with somebody, or like seeing something in public and then like connecting the dots between something I'm working on, in the studio. And like that part of it, I think is still so important to keep hold
divine
of,
inspiration,
you know what I mean?
man.
And like you train your brain, and like I think again, I'm also happy not to be a copywriter, also happy to not be like that 16-year-old kid who's learning now, because I can only imagine myself at that age being like, oh, this is like so much easier. I'm gonna like just tap into this.
And you're reliant.
I'm gonna rely on this. And I think that so much of that, like sitting with a blank page and having to come up with it, right, is like a very important piece to what we do as creative people. And like I think foundational to also being able to like sit in a meeting with a client and like riff on good ideas and like
communicate.
You can't be like sit with a client and be like, all right, let's see what ChatGPT says about this. Like, why the hell are they paying you to do that? You know what I mean?
Articulation, like being able to just us sitting here and converse like this, it is gonna become a pressed art, because it's gonna happen less and less.
100%. Yeah.
I mean, it's even funny, like you say those moments that you kind of like, not like the eureka moment, but when you tie things together.
They are, really.
I remember when we were coming up with the name for Fast Magic, and you had like we had a couple of other ideas, and like looking back, like I don't know what we were thinking.
They were bad.
Yeah, I don't know what we were thinking.
We were gonna be called Roadrunner.
Yeah. I still cool. Liked Hella. Hella was
one. Yeah, we couldn't use
a little juvenile, but
we couldn't get past the idea that it just like
the merch program.
It just felt like it would like had to have flames around it.
Yeah.
Or like
the merch program on that would have been fire.
Yeah, right.
Hella,
the flame beanies.
Some 90s. You guys should still do that.
Yeah.
But then you look at the name we like ended up sitting on, and there's at first glance you're like Fast Magic, like that's such a like a random assortment of words, kind of in a way. Like it doesn't like necessarily immediately feel like it's like a company.
Yep.
But when you think of the traits of what we do as a company, like people come to us looking for magic, and they often want it fast.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's that old school of thought that's like, if you want something cheap, then, is it going to be good?
Yeah.
And if you want something good, then it's not going to be cheap.
Yep.
And,
But I love the FM too. The abbreviation is incredible.
It works
Also,
well.
I love the word magic.
Yeah.
I love like the idea of like high magic and
world.
like occultism and all that stuff. I think it's like and you said it when you came up with the name, and I actually yelled it over you when you were saying, but like the divine inspiration. Like when you have those moments, like Carl Jung talking about synchronicity, where it's like weird coincidences that lead you toward an outcome. Like that's human in my opinion. And I love what you guys have put together, and it's distinct, but it still feels relatable. It's good.
It's like it was a funny moment because it was, Mac and I were sitting at like at my kitchen table, which was essentially like our office for the first little bit, where we'd have like, meetings, and Jack would hustle across the city to the East End to come hang out and, talk about what this thing might be. And we already had a client kind of ready to go, and we had to like draft a contract.
Yeah.
And we had no name. We had no incorporation. We had nothing.
EMT baby.
And I was, and we were like running through
Business
these
101.
names, and I was like, okay, well, I'm like, damn, like we really need magic fast here. And Mac just looked at me and was like, fast magic.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like,
brilliant.
And then we
Crazy.
just it popped, and we were like, oh shit, we could build this world like around like magic, and it like prompts all these things. Well, this is what the merch could be. This is what we could do for a video. Like, even when we dropped the hats, we had like the rabbit coming out of the hat. We're like, oh shit, like this, it started to connect all these pieces out. And we worked on like a small zine that we just like printed at our office last year. And we did this like write up on the first page about like how weird a word magic is. And like people refer to like, a dunk in basketball being like magic, but they also refer to like the way someone dances as like being magical. And like, the word is like, it's everywhere in our society, but like nobody could really define like what it means in one, ubiquitous context.
It's a feeling. Ultimately,
It's like a
right?
feeling. It's like a vision, right? And it's a lot of things and a lot of different things to different people. So
enchantment, man.
Yeah, it took that like one moment where we were like, oh shit, yeah, this actually works really well. Now it does bite us in the ass sometimes because when we take longer than we should on things, people are like, I thought you were fast magic. Or if it's not good, they're like, hey, where's the magic here, right? But
The clients.
We've definitely been hit with the slow magic once or twice.
yeah, we've definitely been hit with the slow magic a few times. Yeah.
Okay, so on that note, I mean, it's really cool to hear like humble beginnings and how quickly you guys have, organized and built the brand universe that you guys have created. Talk to us about some of the stuff you're working on right now.
Yeah, I mean, some cool projects coming up in the new year. We continue to work on Jug, the canned water, which is just a fireball right now in the city. You'll see it in a number of different restaurants. Working as well with the beer company Banditos, doing some really cool stuff in the Mexican lager space. It's a grind working on a beer company when you're fighting like the big, giants of the beer industry.
Yep.
Also working on some personal stuff as well. We've got some new drops coming out for the summer. We're working with some pretty cool vendors on, some new items. And also working on like a few, kind of confidential projects in the fashion world that are going to kind of come public in the next few months that we're really excited about. But yeah, the big thing for us is like, we are trying to grow and see what that next step is. And we spent a lot of our time in 2025 with our heads down, working really hard. So it's been nice to take a bit of a break over the holidays and also like getting into the new year to say like, okay, well, what direction are we really moving in? So we've been doing a lot of kind of foundational work for the company in that sense, both from like a business management perspective, but also from like a creative vision perspective, from like a shared values perspective to figure out, like what is the next step for us. But yeah, certainly like a lot of cool, actual client projects coming out. We're running the 10K in May. So we're training, we're Jack and I are runners now for the first time ever.
That's been interesting as I battled my injury after running twice in a week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But no, it's funny because when we first started, we were, like I said, there's a little bit of fear there, right? No matter what, when you start something new, you're not sure if like, how is this going to work after the initial launch, right? Everybody's always excited in the first month. I can't tell you how many brands I see that like have this big dramatic launch moment and then you almost like never hear from them again. And I think for us, it was so important to be like, okay, we need to really establish like what this is, right? Like what right away, the types of clients we want to work with, and then put our heads down and grind for the year. And then when we kind of had a moment to catch our breath and the year kind of like, it really flew by because we were so busy. And while that's like great, you very quickly start to be obsessed with the deadlines and obsessed with like new projects are in, you don't have a moment to catch your breath from the last one. You know, maybe some things didn't work well on a project, but you got through it, but you don't have the time to like assess those things and like talk about them. Not only as like a company, but when it comes to like how you handle certain things that clients may throw at you, or, you know, when we do something in, say, the production space, we're working with like a lot of other freelancers that we're bringing in, building crews, building teams, and, you know, maybe how we handle certain types of people we're bringing in, how we onboard them, you know, how are they gonna like speak about the brand when they're on set, how are they gonna like talk to their friends about what we are. And I think that they're, like Dom said it, at the end of the year we kind of had this moment where we're like, okay, we've got to take a moment, realize how great of a year we had, but how do we maintain what we started with and build on it, rather than getting so lost in being busy that we just continue to pile so much stuff onto our plates that we don't build this foundation properly. Because I think, you know, any business in the first year, you learn some things and there are some cracks that need to be filled. And I think like we've done a really good job of being like very communicative about those things. But, you know, any company needs to be able to step back, assess, and then build on those things rather than just trying to plow through them, because then they won't solve. And a big thing for us was making sure, like sanity wise, like we don't want to have so much work on our plate that we're back to doing 100-hour weeks. You know, it was important for us to be working on projects we really like and want to do, but also protecting our sanity and make sure that, like, you know, if we work 100 hours, we're happy we're working 100 hours, not doing it so that, you know, we're keeping lights on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
It's definitely a grind.
Yeah. I mean, and keeping meaning in it too, when you start to get into the territories where, especially with client work, it can quickly become monotonous and just take some of the passion out of it. But man, I love building intentionally, you know what I mean? And keeping the communication high as the people who are operating a business. I couldn't agree more, like incredibly important. So, I mean, on that note, before we sign off here, any advice? I'd love to hear from each of you. Any advice for, you know, the young creative, the young person who's launching, whatever it might be, you know, interested in building their own machine, so to speak? What would you leave us with?
Yeah, I mean, like, do it. It's we'll go back to the Nike. Just do it. It's stay hungry and just do that thing that you've been thinking about. And you know, when you have an idea, chase it and do it for the sake of doing it, right? I think get your work out there is so important. I know a lot of really talented creative people that don't post some of their best things for whatever reason. I think there's so much anxiety about putting some work out into the world. There's definitely work I have out in the world that I'm like, I wish that wasn't, like, you know, tied to my name every time. But like the majority of the time, I've regretted not putting things out because down the line, something else similar has happened. And I'm like, well, I had that idea years ago, but I didn't put it out. Right. Or, you know, I have some really cool personal project that I worked on that I never posted because, you know, I was nervous about it. You know, in today's day and age, with the way that the algorithms work on socials, like, you could put something out, not even feel that great about it, and then all of a sudden it explodes and brings you new opportunities that you're super excited about. So I think talk about imposter syndrome a lot, about, you know, being a creative person and thinking you don't deserve to be in a place, or you're not good enough or whatever. Like, get over that and just kind of do the thing that you want to do. And regardless of how good or bad or whatever, which is really a subjective thing, at least it's out into the world, and at least you can continue to progress and, you know, do the thing. That's the thing that I tell, you know, any young creative people. It's like, start the brand, make the design, take the photo.
For sure.
That's always number one.
Just do it. And also, I think early on when you're starting anything, I think it's so important to have wins on the board. So I think, like, when you're starting, setting goals that are easily knock downable to make you feel like you're moving, and, you know, set goals that are realistic. You know, if you're just learning photography, your 1 year goal may not be open a photo studio and work with XYZ biggest brands in the world, but 6 months in, it may be have one reoccurring client that you're really passionate about that helps pay bills and allows you to have creative input. Something that is like an achievable first gate and kind of go from there. Don't worry so much about the angle. Just worry about like the steps that kind of help you get there.
Or take a good photo every day.
Yeah.
Or take a photo every day. You know what I mean? Like,
A friend of ours just bought a camera and is traveling right now, and he's never shot a photo in his life. And he asked me, he's like, what do I do to be good by the time I go on this trip? And I said, you should be shooting 100 photos every day. And from that trip, I've been receiving photos every hour. And it's like,
amazing.
Just knowing that they're trying is kind of like, you know that they're fired up about it because they're sending them. If they weren't fired up, they wouldn't be sending them, you know? So
I love it. You hear that, folks? Just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Go out and do it. Pick goals that you can accomplish and take a photo every day.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having
Absolute
us.
wisdom and magic. I appreciate you guys very much.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Appreciate
Thank you.